Live from the TV30 studio, here is Jim Schneider.
Well, good evening, Happy New Year, and welcome to WVCY Television's inFocus program here on this first program of 2023. We're so glad that you've joined us as we will gather here on Monday evenings to talk about various issues that impact us. Some of these will have a political, public policy feel to them. Others will have a spiritual undertone to them as far as spiritual issues. We know everything that is encountering us right now is really part of spiritual underpinnings of our time. We're in a very spiritual battle here across this community right now and around the world. But we'll cover a variety of issues, and we're thankful that you've joined us here for the broadcast. Just before introducing our guests, we'd like to mention this coming Thursday, Friday is our Days of Praise Share-a-thon for WVCY Radio and TV30. We so appreciate those of you who have given to support the ministry of WVCY for so many years and the work here of TV30. Right now, I'd like to introduce Jelaine Appling from Wisconsin Family Council. Jelaine, good to have you with us here tonight.
Good to be back. It's been a while.
It has been a while, and I just wanted to bring you in because this coming week, January the 11th, just a couple days from now, marks 40 years of broadcasting for TV30. January 11th, 1983 was the very first broadcast with Vic Eliason, and so now 40 years later, we see God's hand of faithfulness continuing.
Congratulations to VCY America for the vision and foresight to start a ministry like this and add this to the complement of communications that you have with your radio and camp and a bookstore and who knows, all of those things. So that's exciting.
So, yep, TV30, 40 years old this very week. Wonderful. And so, friends, continue to be praying for this ministry, and we thank you for your support that makes it possible. Well, within the last 7 days, the inauguration has taken place. The oath of office have been taken. The legislative session is underway. And, friends, we're going to be talking about a number of issues tonight because with this expanded the legislation session getting underway, we find that there are those that are pressing hard to expand abortion access here in our state, others that are pushing for the introduction of marijuana to be legalized in our state as well. We'll talk about some of the issues pertaining to that. And then also the big discussion, what do we do with all this extra money from the budget surplus? So, Jelaine, we've got a lot here on the docket. But first of all, the election that was held in November, the new legislative session just began last week with the oath of office. This is going to have an impact upon our state.
Oh, it certainly will. Elections have consequences, and we are going to start reaping the consequences of the elections that we had in early November. The leadership has been established in the Republican Party as a majority in the state legislature, as well as the minority party of the Democrats. They've got their leadership in place. We've once again got this split government. We've got a Democrat in the governor's office. We've got the state legislature solidly in control of Republicans. Now, not all of them are as conservative as a lot of us would like, but they are certainly different from what Tony Evers has been pushing as the governor. So it's, again, we're going to have a lot of vetoes, Jim. The only thing I'll say about this is we're 1 week into the new session as of tomorrow, and only two bills have been introduced. And since we had over 2,200 last session, I was afraid I was going to look at that and go, oh, no, here we go again. But so far, it started off with a little bit more restraint than the last time. But we're going to see every area of our lives impacted by the policy that the legislature and the governor work on during this time.
Well, we've got a lot here on our plate. Well, the inauguration took place, the swearing in took place, and ladies and gentlemen, last week there was the swearing in of the state treasurer, John Lieber, and then after he was sworn in, then Doug LaFollette, a long-reigning Secretary of State, perhaps the largest or the longest term of any across this country. Doug LaFollette having that position, and then it was Josh Kaul, sworn in again as the Attorney General for the state of Wisconsin. He won the election over Eric Toney, and we're going to just take you back to this last week, last Tuesday, to his swearing in, taking the oath of office.
Repeat after me, please. I state your name.
I, Joshua Kaul,
swear that I will support
swear that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office
to
the best of my ability, so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Faithfully and impartially. Okay, so we saw his first term, and it seemed to me there were some things in our laws that he was not wanting to uphold, such as our laws that advocate for life.
That's exactly right. He came out, if you remember, after the hearing, the oral arguments on Dobbs, right? Those were in early December of 2021, and he came out, I think it was in January or February, and said, I don't care how the Supreme Court rules on this, I will not enforce that law. A duly passed, enacted law from 1849 by duly elected legislators, signed into law by a duly elected governor. That is the law of the land, and that's what he said, that he would uphold the law of Wisconsin. We've seen this in a number of different ways. He filed a lawsuit against the 1849 law within 4 days of the U.S. Supreme Court overturning it on June 24th of 2022. He has filed a number of other lawsuits where he said, you know, he disagrees with what has happened legally and through the legislative process here in Wisconsin. Sometimes I marvel, Jim, at the ability for people to swear an oath of office, knowing that they have an agenda that will supersede what they are saying they're pledging allegiance to and a commitment.
Yeah. Well, after he took that oath, then the next one taking the oath was Sarah Rodriguez, who is the new lieutenant governor replacing Mandela Barnes. Let's witness her swearing in last Tuesday.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Sarah Rodriguez,
Swear that I will support
swear that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Okay, so there we have Sarah Rodriguez take that oath of office. She went then to give a speech, Julaine, in which she advocated for fully funding public schools, about affordable child care, paid family leave, gun control, and then also advancing abortion. We're going to watch the clip, and then we'll have you comment on it. Sarah Rodriguez in her speech before at the inauguration.
As a nurse, as a mother, we believe that reproductive health care is health care, and that every person should have the right to make their own reproductive health care decisions without interference from elected officials who know nothing about their faith, their family, or their circumstances.
They actually went on to give a standing ovation for her. And did you notice how she said every person, but there's one person she was neglecting, the baby in the womb.
That's exactly right. Well, this is a euphemism. It's their cover-up, right? The language of reproductive health care. What they really mean is abortion. They consistently try to talk about abortion in terms of a right. What, after Dobbs was overturned, didn't you hear that? Oh, they took away our right. There is no right to an abortion. There is no right to kill another human being anywhere. You know, I heard I think yesterday, the South Carolina court found a right to abortion in the South Carolina Constitution. That's not true. It's not there. Sarah Rodriguez is just giving us the language of the liberals that say reproductive health care is a right, meaning a right to abortion. I also noticed that she could talk about a person. That's not what she really means women. But I guess because now that they talk about, you know, a person who has a baby rather than a woman who has a baby, I guess they have to keep using that terminology. But what she's saying is This is my worldview, and I don't, from my perspective, Jim, I don't know how she can fulfill her vow, her oath of office, with impartiality. She's declared a position and a worldview on this. And she will use the office of Lieutenant Governor, I am sure, to as kind of a bully pulpit, if you will, to try to get that, to make progress on that, sadly.
The last oath that was taken then by Governor Tony Evers, and so we'll witness his swearing in, and then we'll come back with some comments on that as well.
Please repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Tony Evers,
Swear that I will support
swear that I will support
the Constitution of the United
the
States
Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of
and
Wisconsin.
the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
And I will faithfully and impartially
and I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of said office
discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
There we have Governor Tony Evers taking that oath of office again with that emphasis, so help me God. Now, I'm going to have you comment on this because I'm not going to air this, but right after this, he went up to the podium, and I quote, he said, "I'm jazzed as hell," he said, to be sworn in again as the 46th governor of the great state of Wisconsin, and then repeated that phrase again. People sometimes say the devil is in the details, and certainly when one would use terminology like that, it doesn't mean good things for the state of Wisconsin, in my opinion.
Well, I would agree with you on that, Jim, and I think we should make sure that everyone understands the oath of office, up to the part that says, so help me God, is actually prescribed in the law. So they don't get to write their own oath of office. It is what Chief Justice, that was Chief Justice Annette Ziegler, Chief Justice of our state Supreme Court, administering that oath. So they're adding this, so help me God. I couldn't help but think there's a bit of a making of a mockery here. Governor Evers has used pretty strong language during other situations in our state, so I wasn't really surprised to see him do that. But what really concerned me is what he followed that up with this litany of things that I'm not at all jazzed about, and that in truth, pretty much it means the shaking of a fist at God's plan for humanity, God's good plan for humanity.
Isn't he also the one that consistently year after year has raised a pride flag over the state capitol, indicating really in defiance against the God whom he's taken this oath by? Well,
We heard it from three different people, and their positions on a fundamental issue like life flies in the face of a thrice holy God who says, I created you, and I created you distinctly male and female, and I've got a plan for marriage. And just to clarify, June's coming. It's going to be raised again. That pride flag is going to be raised over the Capitol. And for everybody that's going to squawk about that, I agree with you. But I'm telling you, that's one of the consequences of an election. He has the authority to do it. He's proclaiming his worldview. We can only act so long inconsistently with who we really are, right? And that's who Governor Evers is. He's beholden to Planned Parenthood, and he's beholden to the LGBTQ plus agenda.
Well, Governor Evers also showed his support for taking the life of babies in the womb, and we've got a couple clips. Twice he referred to this in his speech, his unification speech, but let's watch this clip.
People voted because they believe, as I do, that we should expand Badger Care and work to ensure everyone has access to quality, affordable health care, because it's 2023, and they believe we shouldn't be beholden to a law from the 1800s passed well before women had the right to vote. Because they believe people should have the freedom to make their own reproductive health decisions without needing permission from politicians. And if we want to make sure we can compete for talented workers and businesses against other states, then we ought to start by making sure that when workers and businesses look to relocate to Wisconsin, part of that calculus doesn't include themselves their loved ones, or their workers being stripped of their reproductive freedom just for moving here. We must restore the freedoms that Wisconsinites have had until June 23rd, 2022, the day before the U.S. Supreme Court overrode Roe v. Wade, and I believe that together we will.
Governor Tony Evers in a speech last Tuesday for his second term as governor, and I don't know if he's wanting to put up billboards, "We kill babies here," or what. Your comment on what he had to say.
Well, it sounds like that's what he wants to do. He wants to lure people here for business and economic reasons, but he doesn't want them to have to live under the 1849 law that is currently in effect that bans most abortions in our state. I just, as I listen to that, I just can't help but be struck again by the lengths people will go to take a human life. This is not the product of conception. This is not a clump of tissues. This is not some fetal mass. This is a human baby from the moment of conception, biologically. I don't know about you, Jim, but over the holidays, I saw so many of these ads for animals that are abused. And they pull at your heartstrings. They're playing Silent Night, and they give money to rescue these animals. And yet, we will wantonly, proudly, brazenly say things like Sarah Rodriguez said, and things like Governor Evers has said, to the killing of the preborn. Yeah. Reproductive freedom does not extend to the point of taking the life of another human being, and we are not communicating that well. I don't know if we're not reaching hearts, but we're not getting that message across. That this is a distinct individual, owns its own DNA. And
you mentioned about the animals, and they'll show the pictures. They see the effectiveness of pictures, but they will not show pictures of that little baby or a baby being ripped apart. And they'll show a malnourished animal, but they will not show that malnourished baby in the womb or the trauma that happens there.
But they don't even, that's one reason, that is the reason they don't like the sonogram law, the ultrasound law that we passed during the Walker administration, that required anyone, and we're looking for an abortion here, to at least have one, and they don't have to look at it under the law, but they have to hear the description. And they don't want that. They don't want the reality. And yet we know little kids will look at those ultrasound pictures and go, baby, because it's so obvious.
Right.
They dehumanize at every opportunity.
So we know the agenda continues under Governor Evers, now a new lieutenant governor right now as well. But Jelaine, we know also that there is going to be a push in our legislature to abandon our abortion law as we have it from 1849 right now, and to expand it for rape and incest. And this is something that is not just coming from those with a D behind their name, but from those who have an R behind their name as well.
Well, unfortunately, there is talk about that. How far that will go and when it will come out, I'm not sure. I've heard multiple stories, multiple time frames, multiple options for that. Robin Vos came out early on, I believe it was shortly after the Dobbs decision came down, and said that he thought we should add rape and incest. That was a political move because that was prior to the election, and they were concerned that polling was showing that people want rape and incest. I understand part of that, Jim. But regardless of the situation surrounding the conception, as horrific as any sexual assault is, you still have a unique human being that has come about because of that conception. Yeah. And it's not that child's fault. And we need to supply support for the woman who has been so grievously offended, and yet encourage her to keep that baby. I think the Republicans, if they go forward with this, are on very, very shaky ground, because what's going to be hung on them is, we had a ban in place in Wisconsin, but you Republicans opened it up so we have more abortion. Because there's been talk about 15-week abortion ban. Well, that is even worse. That is even more abortions than adding rape and incest to the exceptions.
Right, right. Jelaine, and here is a story that came from lifenews.com, and it's telling the story of Rebecca Kiesling, who indicated she was conceived in rape, but she was glad that she was not killed in abortion.
I read the story with interest. I've heard of her before. But I got to tell you, Jim, I'm adopted. I know nothing about my birth parents. Nothing. Closed adoption. Never pursued it. I very easily could have been the result of a rape or an incest. I join with Rebecca saying, I'm really glad my mother had my birth mother had the courage, regardless of the circumstances, to carry me to term, to give me the opportunity to live and let me be adopted by wonderful parents like Bob and Mary Appling. That's the story. And I think, again, I want to circle back to this. What we need is a mechanism for supporting the women. And by the way, we need to also go after the men who perpetrated this crime. The minute you add rape and incest as exceptions, what's happening to the perpetrator? Basically, he's getting off scot-free. And so I think there's a lot of thought that we need to give to this, because Rebecca's story isn't the only one out there.
Right.
More and more people are starting to say, I'm the product of a rape or an incest. We have more and more women who are saying, I'm so glad I made the choice, as hard as it was, to carry that baby to term or give the baby up for adoption. I think giving them a baby up for adoption is win-win-win most of the time. A win for the birth mother, a win for the child, and a win for the adoptive parent.
Yeah.
So
Jelaine, we're going to add even to this equation here, because we learned recently that Milwaukee County, and we understand Dane, Racine, likely doing the same thing, and there's probably going to be other add-ons to this as well, but Milwaukee County is going to be putting an advisory referendum on our April ballot to void, do you want to invalidate this 1849 law restricting abortion in our state? Don't have the exact verbiage for that as of yet, but Milwaukee County voters are going to be seeing that on the ballot.
this is exactly what they did in November. It was on a number of ballots across the state. It's vote bait. It's pure and simple vote bait, because they know there are people who will not understand it is not a binding referendum. It is an advisory referendum. It makes no one, forces no one to do anything or not do anything. And they just want to drive a certain population to the polls, knowing that once they get them there, or to fill out an absentee ballot, they will vote the way they want them to vote on any of the offices that are there. I'm very sorry that this happens. And Jim, I wish you and I had all the money in the world so that we could go out and just somehow mass educate everyone to look out for these and not be drawn in, like a fish on a line.
Right.
On these kinds of advisory referendums. They're going to put marijuana on there again. Who knows what they're going to do.
But there is, no matter how people vote, it has no effect.
None. Zero.
The only purpose is to get people to the polls to cast a vote.
Well, let's clarify. There are going to be referenda on the April ballot that are about school levies and, school spending caps and all of that, and maybe some things pertinent to a particular municipality.
Those would be binding referendums.
Those are binding. Those are binding. These others are put on by the county, and they are strictly advisory. And I'm going to use a term again. They are, we talk about clickbait. This is vote bait.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about why the vote bait at such an election, because we'll come back to this legislative session here in just a bit, but there's a reason why they want this on the ballot in April in particular, because it's not only these kind of advisory things that are there, but there's a very important key race that will be on the ballot, and that is for a 10-year term to the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
You're right. And this is a Supreme Court election that is, I don't remember one any more important. And in fact, Jim, there's a sense in which this Supreme Court election almost eclipses some of the things that happened in November. Why? Because right now we have a Supreme Court 7-member that has a conservative bent, 4-3. Most court observers say it's a 4-3 conservative court. The individual, the justice stepping down, is Patience Rogensack, who served 2 10-year terms. She's not running again. That leaves an open seat. She is generally conservative. That means we have an open seat for a seat held by one of the 4. And the liberals, and this, I'm not making this up, it's in the news, the liberals see this as an opportunity to get done through the courts what they can't get done here in Wisconsin through the legislature. Why? Because the legislature is controlled by the Republicans, and you got a Democrat governor, so it's a stalemate. So they see an opportunity to undo redistricting, undo the abortion, find a right to abortion in our state constitution.
And that is working its way up through the court levels right now.
Absolutely. Undo our school choice. You go down the list of the things that we have gained that have been good for families, good for life, and all of that over the last 10, 15, 25 years maybe. It stands to be undone. It really does. And so we've got 4 candidates. Court experts tell us that 2 of them are liberal, one's from Milwaukee, one's from Madison, and 2 are supposedly conservative, okay? We've got to find out more information about these candidates. One of the candidates is well known on the conservative side because he is a former state Supreme Court justice. That's Dan Kelly.
Daniel Kelly.
Right. He was appointed by Walker. He served 4 terms. He ran in 2020.
4 years.
Excuse me. That'd be 40 years. He ran, 4 years. Then he ran in 2020, and if you remember 2020 election, presidential preference primary with only basically the Democrats on there because Donald Trump was the incumbent, and COVID. We were told on Friday you can't go to the polls and vote. We were told on Monday, oh yes, you can go and vote in the polls tomorrow. There was so much uncertainty with the COVID and the absentee ballots and all of that, and Dan lost. Okay, so he's running again. Jennifer Doro is the other one that's supposedly conservative, and she has her claim to fame at this point is how she handled the Waukesha Christmas parade, horrible murders that happened there, and the world watched that and thought that she handled that well. And shortly after that, I saw that she was being kind of pushed to the forefront to run for this office as well. And the other 2 are just one. They are so outspoken on what they believe. It's very clear to tell they're liberal. Mm-hmm. By the way, right after Dobbs came out, the candidate from Madison came out and said, this is a woman's right. I couldn't believe it. I mean, he wrote it in a Facebook post. And I'm like, I can't believe you're doing this. You're a declared candidate for this race, and you've come out and already told us where you land. Yeah.
Today, Justice Rogensack endorsed Jennifer Doro. Justice Rebecca Bradley has previously endorsed Daniel Kelly, so there's a split taking place there as well between conservative justices.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up endorsements. I think endorsements are very, very important. One of the hardest races for anyone to get information on is a judicial race because the justices are loath to talk about things that might come before them. But I think more and more information will be coming out. Remember that this has a primary now so we got 4 candidates. You only get to vote for 1, and the top 2 vote getters will go on to the general election. So that primary happens on Tuesday, February 21st, and then the top 2 vote getters will go on to the general election on April 4th. So it could critical election.
It could be 2 of the more conservative, it could be 2 of the more liberal, it could be a mixture between the 2.
Right, and probably we'll get a mixture, right? Just because of the way the state breaks down, and assuming conservatives go out and the liberal groups go out, then we'll probably get a mixture of those. But you're right. When you get 4 like that, you could end up with two liberals or 2 conservatives and going into that final general election.
We understand that tomorrow the Wisconsin Elections Committee is going to be meeting, and they're going to be, in essence, approving the ballot access, approving the candidates' names to be on the February ballot. Well,
that's what has to happen. The candidates had to get, I believe it was 2,000 signatures, and submit them between December 1st and January, whatever the 2nd of January, and have all that ready to go by, I guess it was by Tuesday the 3rd. And they have to, the Elections Commission had to go through those names and verify that the names were legitimate citizens and that they have all the information. And so tomorrow they will say, okay, all 4 are on, or maybe there's one that didn't make it. I don't know. We'll see. I suspect they'll all be on unless there was something going on where there were, people who shouldn't have been signing onto a candidate's nomination papers, and those names have to be tossed out.
Right, and both of the candidates received more signatures than the required 2,000, so there would have to be a lot of whittling away in order to disqualify for the Supreme Court, and I think there are different levels for different offices. Speaking of different offices, right after our November election, shortly thereafter, we had this announcement come from Senator Alberta Darling saying, I'm retiring. And so this is going to be another office on the ballot.
I know, we have great fun with elections in Wisconsin, right? It's just a constant flow of them. But that will necessitate, that vacant Senate District 8, will necessitate a special election. So the governor has already said when that's going to happen. The primary will be on February 21st, and the general election will happen with the spring general election on the 4th of April. So right now we have a Democrat candidate out there, and we have 3 Republicans out there. 2 of those 3 are sitting in the state assembly right now. So assuming, so here's how the election trickle goes, right? Assuming one of those 2 wins that, then we're going to be filling a vacancy in the assembly for whichever of those seats, because I think that's probably how that's going to go. Janelle Branchen is out there, Dan Knodel, and I understand the mayor of Thiensville has also declared, and it's submitted signatures to be on the ballot.
Okay, so again, we will be watching to see what is certified by the Wisconsin Election Commission, and then we'll soon have the official ballot, so to speak, and then we will all be able to go to myvote.wi.gov to see what's on my ballot. I was just on there today. Nothing is certified yet. Nothing is available there, but that will be coming very soon.
It will be, and as we've said many times, a lot of things the government does I don't appreciate, but that vote, that myvote.gov, myvote.wisconsin,
myvote.wi.gov.
Thank you. How could I forget that? I say it so much. But that's a really helpful website. And it will be there, and we encourage people to check that out because you can get reliable information on what other because the spring election isn't just about the special election and the Supreme Court election. It's about mayors, and it's about school board members and city council members, and I think it's probably some county board members, and it's about the local offices that directly impact our lives.
Julian, I'd like to call your attention to an article that was in yesterday's Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, and the headline, Senate GOP close to backing medical marijuana. And this is going to take us to another issue that's coming up this legislative session. I want to read just a couple paragraphs. Republican lawmakers in the state Senate are close to supporting the legalization of marijuana in Wisconsin for medical use. Senate Majority Leader Devin LeMahieu said Thursday. LeMahieu, who until now has opposed the idea, told the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel he believes legislation and let me correct, that's LeMahieu, to create a medical marijuana program in the state could be passed this legislative session as long as regulations are put forward to ensure that it's for those in serious pain. Our caucus is getting pretty close on medical marijuana. A lot of our members who are maybe at a point where they can vote for it now, they just want to make sure it's regulated well. And then he said, we don't want people going in because their back hurts and getting medical marijuana. It needs to be cancer pain, prescribed. That's from Mr. LeMahieu. This is something that has been pretty much taboo for the majority of the GOP legislators, but it looks like the lid is cracking open.
Well, it has been. It's been Republicans, well, backing it up one step. Governor Evers has put it into both of his budget proposals during his first administration. Full legalization, not just restricted to medical. Then some of the Republicans in the Senate and in the Assembly have been floating out bills on some kind of deregulation of marijuana or a medical legalization of marijuana, testing the waters. And up until this statement from Devin LeMahieu, the Senate Majority Leader, it's been a no-go. They haven't even gotten, well, maybe 1 or 2 got a hearing, but there hasn't been any indication that would go to the floor for a full vote. In my opinion, this is a slippery slope. In states where this has happened, the next step is we go to recreational. You talk about regulations. What are the regulations that are sufficient, right, to make sure that every doctor is abiding by them? It's just, I find this, personally, I find this regrettable, and I'm disappointed to hear that Devin LeMahieu is talking like this. But I have seen, Jim, I deal with candidates a lot, and another aspect of my work. I've seen it coming on our questionnaire, candidate after candidate after candidate, conservative candidates otherwise. either put not sure or support for medical marijuana. And the main reason is they know someone who in their story has benefited from it. I'm not denying this story, but I think that it's going to be extremely difficult to find the language that sufficiently regulates this so that it doesn't go down that proverbial slope faster and further than we ever imagined.
Has there been any state that has found that balance as of yet?
Not any that I know of.
Yeah, because it always, as you said, Pandora's box is open here. This is the first step just for cancer, and then, then this, and then this, and then this, and then, you just have, okay, now you can start growing it at home. You can have so many plants, and then it goes into the recreational. Some states will do it all in one fell swoop. Others will take it gradually, but it gets to that same destination.
It does, and I think we'll be one of those states, if they open up this box, I think we'll be one of the states that will go incrementally. But I will tell you, I just, the more I read about it, the more I hear about it, the more I look at other states where they fought this battle. And by the way, in every other state that's had it, there's been some Republican support for it. There's states where you can talk about where that's happened. But this is I don't know. I hope this is not one of those things that everybody says, time to move on. Let's just get it done and move on. I hear that so often.
You had talked about a couple bills already that have been introduced, and we're going to share them with our viewers here tonight because this could appear on the April ballot for voters as well. It's Assembly Joint Resolution 1. We'll see that at the very top of the document there. It's Assembly Joint Resolution 1, and then there's a companion, which is Senate Joint Resolution 2. So this is something that could be on the ballot, just introduced January 5. Give us a word about these. What is this?
Well, this joint resolution comes out of this whole concern we have that really was profiled with the Waukesha Christmas Parade, a horrible incident, right? Because the perpetrator had been previously taken in and then let out in Milwaukee with basically very little to no bail, and then went out and did this. And so there's been talk percolating all along about putting down some restrictions on bail and making sure that judges have the tools they need to not be locked into a bail, but they also are required to consider things like the safety of the community. What the likelihood of whether or not the individual with the charge is going to commit another crime. And that's really what this is. Let's quickly set the stage here, though. When we talk about these joint resolutions, this is a workaround the governor. Joint resolutions that go to the people in the form of a referendum on a ballot, like in April, okay, don't have to go by the governor.
Isn't that something he would sign into law?
Oh, no, he wouldn't sign this into law. This would be one of his 100 and some odd, vetoes this next session. And so, but this goes directly to the people. It has to pass in 2 consecutive legislative sessions. And one of the things that you can show people on your sheet there is it says second consideration. And that it's already passed in the first, in the previous legislative session. And the law said it has to pass in 2 consecutive legislative sessions and then go to the people for a simple majority vote. Okay? So this is second consideration. If they can get this done very, very quickly, it can be on the ballot. It has to be, I believe it has to be out 30 days prior to the vote, so that people understand it.
So this would not be on the February ballot; it would be on the April ballot. It would be in the
April ballot. Yeah, and there's no way to get it on there for the February. But it's really about tightening down. They couldn't get it through. They couldn't get a bill through because the governor would veto it. So they're looking to go to an amendment to the Constitution. To be honest with you, this isn't the kind of thing that generally we do an amendment to the Constitution for. We amend the Constitution for things like marriage.
Right.
But bail. But this is precisely what happens when you have a split government.
Are there other issues? There are other resolutions, that are pending before.
Yeah, because of that very reason. For instance, I'm looking at one here that is Senate Joint Resolution 32 from last session, and it deals with the eligibility to vote in Wisconsin. And it takes the word, for instance, it says, originally it said every U.S. citizen age 18. And this one says only a U.S. citizen. You know what they're getting at there? looking at people who are in this country illegally. And then there's one related to the Zuckerbucks, which are already back. I don't know if you saw the news.
Yes.
Madison's about to get $1.5 million. So the governor vetoed a bill that would have prevented this third-party money from coming in to, quote, help with elections in counties and cities. So there's a referendum that already passed once, so it would have to pass again. And then there's another one that says, and this one is interesting. Remember all the COVID money that came in to the state, and the governor gave it out however he wanted? And the legislature kept putting out bills saying, no, give it here. And he said, I don't care what you guys say, I'm going to give it where I want. So Planned Parenthood got $2 million, and he gave back to all his cronies, right? This bill says, we're not handing off our powers as a legislature to control money that comes in. And that if the money comes into the state, the governor can expend it without legislative approval. And again, this is happening because of the way we're doing government right now.
Friends, we've got more to discuss, but I would like to open some phone lines this evening to give you opportunity to make a comment about the things we've talked about so far. Your thoughts on the direction for our state for the next four-year term of Governor Evers. What's your thoughts here to the abortion issue as it pertains to our 1849 law here in our state? The push for medical marijuana made the front page of Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel yesterday. So we're opening phone lines, giving you opportunity to share your thoughts, or if you have a question regarding these issues, our number is 414-935-3030. 414-935-3030. Toll free, you can reach us at 1-800-733-8830. That's 1-800-733-8830. And if you'd like to text in your question or a brief comment, you can text it to this number, 414-439-3585. Be sure to include your first name and the city that you're texting from, 414-439-3585. That's a text-in line here this evening, and we would welcome your calls on it. Friends, tonight in Focus, there's a number of public policy issues. And Jelaine, another issue that's percolating right now is we got a whole lot of money. It's called a budget surplus here for the state of Wisconsin to the tune of billions of dollars. How significant is this? And the big question is, what do we do with it?
Well, look, I'm all for a rainy day fund, but it needs to be reasonable, because this isn't some kind of money that the state has because they've gotten it from whatever. And every dime and every penny that the state has is from taxpayers. $6.9 billion is the projected surplus by the end of June of this year. I think there's an ethical and a moral responsibility to do something to give back to the taxpayers. Chris Kapenga has talked about eliminating the income tax. Devin Lemahue has talked about a flat tax. Robin Voss hasn't come out really clearly yet, but he seems to be indicating that he would do more in the tax brackets and make some changes in there.
Adjust every bracket.
Adjust every, and it gets a little messy. But at a minimum, that has to happen, because this is an insane amount of money for the state to be sitting on. So they have to find a creative way. Talk about the no income tax. By the way, just statistically, so you know, last year, 2021. 10,000 more families left Wisconsin than moved into Wisconsin. When that happens, not just the present is gone, but the future, because those families are going to places like Texas and Florida. And one of the reasons is there's no income tax there. So it becomes very, very helpful to them as a family to rear their families. Those kids aren't going to come back here to go to school or to bring to have their jobs here, and the parents aren't going to retire here. It's too sweet down there, weather but also the income tax. We've got to find a way to keep people here, to keep Wisconsin's best natural resource here, and that's married mom and dad families and their children. So somehow they've got to wrestle with that and find a way to not spend it on special interest programs, but to actually give some tax relief, meaningful tax relief, back to the families of Wisconsin.
Let's get to the phone lines here this evening. Brad in West Dallas. Good evening, Brad. You're on the air.
Hey, Brother Jim. I just want to comment on this abortion thing. They've never wanted to call abortion murder, which it is. And for quite a while now, they haven't even wanted to call abortion. They've cooked up this reproductive health care scam. Now, I would never do such a thing as this, but that would be like me shooting my bow and using these people who are in favor of abortion for targets and then calling it retroactive reproductive health care. The other thing about the abortion thing is it reminds me of what Jesus told the disciples when he was telling them that the world was going to hate them. And that he said that the world would hate them because they hated him first, and they hated him without a cause. It was for their association with Jesus. Now, the apostles and the disciples were not innocent people. They were sinners, but Jesus was innocent, and that's what the enemy hates. These babies are innocent as well. And these people that want to kill them they're not Democrats or socialists or whatever. They're pagans. They got blood in their eyes, anger in their heart, and hatred for the innocent without a cause, just like Jesus.
Brad, thanks for the comments here this evening. Scripture tells us, Jelaine, God says, I hate the hands that shed innocent blood.
Well, absolutely. And, it's better that a millstone be hung around your neck and you be cast into the sea than to offend a little one. And certainly by taking a little one's life, it's murder. There's no other way to talk about it.
Our phone number tonight, 414-935-3030, toll free at 1-800-733-8830. And to text in your comment, 414-439-3585. Let's go to Mayville next. Hi, Kelly, you're on the air.
I just have a couple of comments. My first comment is about abortion. I agree with the last viewer that it's murder, simple as that. Thou shalt not kill, one of the commandments. What are people thinking? I don't understand it. And then as far as marijuana goes, that's a mind-altering drug, and the cost of legalizing it it's going to be outrageous because the effects of the marijuana. So that's my comment.
Thank you. There's societal cost with this as well. I've seen some of the horrible statistics, don't have them with me here right now, but from states like Colorado, the emergency room visits, the family breakups. I mean, the societal cost is enormous.
It is. We know in Illinois, for instance, that they've had an increase in automobile accidents because of people being under the influence of marijuana. Just because somebody gets a prescription for marijuana to handle the pain from cancer, you're going to stop them from driving? How many people drive under the influence of a drug? I agree with him. It is, and not only that. By the way, there's some research that shows it's associated with an increase in violence in the people who take it.
Yeah. Let's go to our next caller. And he's gone. And that was Ted. Let's go to Ted in Greenfield. Hi, Ted. You're on the air.
Yes, I would.
Okay, Brian, I think we need to hang up line number 2 there.
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead, Ted.
I'd like to have you consider the comparing all of the states in the country with the states that are led by DeSantis and Greg Abbott. And, I'm a firm believer that they're trying to tell the rest of the country that they too can be very, very successful in the way that they manage affairs of their state. With first concerns for, the preborn being very close to the top of the page, if not right there. Another thing is the voter security and other issues, but the rest of the state could learn so much just by observing and patterning themselves after the manner in which DeSantis and Abbott govern their states.
Yeah. Thank you, Ted. I appreciate that. We'll have our guest comment. There's a reason people are going to Florida, a reason they're going to Texas.
Well, yeah, and it also happens to be that we talked about, Texas and Florida not having an income tax, and here they both also have these great governors, right? They are setting a model. They're setting a pattern. They're setting an example of, and we know, Jim, during the November election, the governors who came out the most solidly, gubernatorial candidates who came out most solidly on the life issue got elected. And a number of Republicans wanted to walk away from the life issue. They didn't want to touch it, where they were advised to not touch it. And so I think Ted's right on. They're providing a pattern, if you will, and maybe infusing some courage into some of these folks who will run for office and those who are currently serving, to say, hey, there's a better way to do this, to protect rights and to grow our state.
Our phone number tonight, 414-935-3030. If you'd like to have a comment or if perhaps you have a question about our topic of discussion this evening, 414-935-3030, toll free at 800-733-8830. And again, to text in your message to us this evening, be sure to include your first name, your city, and then send your comment to 414-439-3585. Julian, one of the matters that we were just talking about the surplus a bit ago, we know there's going to be a new budget coming, but Governor Evers has said if a flat tax is part of that budget, it's dead in the water. If there is universal school choice that's part of the budget, that also will be dead in the water.
Well, one of the things people need to understand is our governor still has, even though we've reined it in a little bit over the last 10 years or so, has the most powerful veto pen in the country. Mm-hmm. And he can use it to strike out those kinds of things. So just quickly to give people a process here, the governor is going to give us his executive budget proposal in February. And then the state legislature will then tear into it. What happened last time, 2 years ago, is they completely redid it. I mean, truly redid it.
He had massive increase in spending.
He had the largest increase in spending proposed ever in the history of Wisconsin. So now, what do you think he's going to do with the $6.9 billion budget or surplus sitting out there? I don't know, but we know he's going to come back with marijuana. He's going to come back with his proposal, and then, as I said, the legislature will start ripping it apart and doing with it. And we'll end up with something. And once they get it passed in the legislature and it goes to the governor, he'll take that veto pen and he will go through. Now, it used to be he could go through and partially do one sentence and connect it to another sentence, and we got rid of that with with a referendum. But he still has a very powerful veto pen. So
okay, so that will be the process for that coming up. Jelaine, there's another aspect I'd like to get in tonight as well, and that is directives really coming from the White House to expand abortion pills going across this nation. Abortion pills cause chemical abortions, and this is something that President Biden is wanting to be forced upon even states that have banned abortion from taking place. We understand some of the major chains like Walgreens and CVS are going to be providing this matter, and your comment about the abortion pill and its impact upon Wisconsin.
Well, we know right now that the majority of the abortions that are happening, and probably this was true pre-Dobbs too, Jim, are chemical rather than surgical. Okay? Mm-hmm. Most of them are a two-step process. It's an RU486. I want to quickly say right there that there is now a pill that you can take after the first step that can undo the damage from the first one and reverse that. Unfortunately, we tried to pass a bill making sure women knew about that in Wisconsin, and the governor vetoed it. So, but I know the FDA has approved this for pharmacies to dispense. Right now, and according to our law, we have a telemed ban for that kind of thing happening here. And as far as I know, it's still being enforced. The problem with this enforcement is, and by the way, I think this is another thing. I think there's some money, and I know this is surprising, but there's money here. Where are the women in Wisconsin probably getting theirs RU486 right now? India. Okay? We don't have a means to stop that.
Not regulated.
Not regulated in its production, the quality, and this is not like taking a Tylenol. Mm-hmm. This is a very potent pharmaceutical. It does come with side effects. If we really care about women, we want them to know about those side effects. We want them to understand that there's a possibility for you to take a pill to reverse the damage if you decide to. There's so much women need to know about it. We don't need this wholesale marketed across this country and overriding our state law by some kind of a wave of Joe Biden's magic wand that he can find a way to say, okay, I'm going to make sure that even if you've got a law like we have in Wisconsin, we're going to override it.
So, friends, there is much going on here in our state right now, legislatively speaking, and yes, the legislature is coming back into full session. We're going to see a plethora of bills introduced soon. We have a very critical election that is coming up in February as a primary. Right now, it appears 4 candidates. We'll find out from the Election Commission for sure regarding their certification of that ballot and how many are going to be on the primary ballot. And then we have this important Supreme Court election all coming up here this coming spring. Jelaine Appling comes here once a month here on inFocus to keep you abreast of things. But in the meantime, Jelaine, your organization is very active in writing and discussing public policy issues. You're putting forth emails and press releases and keeping people across the state informed. How can our viewers stay engaged with Wisconsin Family Council?
We urge them to go to our website at wifamilycouncil.org. And call us if you have questions. They can engage with us through social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, and we try to keep up with those on a regular basis during the day, engaging with people, asking them to respond, and give us a phone call, if you want to know more about it. I do think that we're going to have some voter education material out. I don't know that we'll have it for the primary, depending, because that's a lot of tracking on the candidates, but for the Supreme Court race, but certainly by the general election in April. We'll have that available on our website. We'll make sure people know about it and get them information to help them make a knowledgeable decision.
Jelaine, we're living in critical times, and sometimes we think, what's the use? Why should people be engaged?
Well, our input makes a difference, number one. But number two, I think we have a biblical mandate to be engaged. We were put here with a purpose, for a reason, at a time, and government is God's design. It's not man-made. Government is instituted by God, and human government, civil government. And he tells us that we are to engage local authorities. We're not to, we're to pray for them, that there's a purpose for civil government. And he gives the nations and consequently the states a form of government he wants them to have. We've got a republic. How blessed are we?
Yeah.
It's a participatory form of government. So my stewardship enters in. How do I steward being a citizen in a republic? I vote. I interact with legislators. I'm informed about issues. I do my civic duty. And I care about my community, and from my community right up through, the federal level. In this, it's a glorious opportunity. We're here for such a time as this, right?
We are, and we need to be salt. We need to be light. Jelaine, thank you for being with us here tonight.
Thank you, Jim.
Jelaine Appling from Wisconsin Family Council. Again, their website, wifamilycouncil.org, wifamilycouncil.org. Their toll-free number, 1-888-378-7395. Friends, thank you for joining us here tonight on TV 30's inFocus program. Don't forget the Share-a-thon this coming Thursday and Friday here on VCY. Have a good night.